Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Hulse Soda and I take the influence out of photography and I focus on what makes you money, not what makes you spend it. And today I'm joined by my best friend who also happens to be one of Australia's best commercial food and beverage photographers, Miss Sally Hulse. And we're going to be talking about all things photography industry in 2025 as it pertains to Australia and the world at large. And we're going to be focusing a lot on AI. So this is a long form podcast. It's the first time doing this kind of thing on this channel. So let's get into it. Sally, hi.
Hi.
It feels weird when it's like we were just talking normally 5 minutes ago. Now it's like the world's watching.
It's a formal setting.
Yeah, it is. So welcome to my podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome to my YouTube channel.
Thank you.
I finally made one. This is something that I've been talking to Sally about for years. And now I'm actually doing
So
it.
you're doing it.
Yeah. So today we thought this is something that we talk about all the time as two people in the industry, and we thought it's a conversation that needs to be had on a bigger platform. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to be concerned of, but there's also a lot to be excited about. And we thought we'd focus today's episode mainly on, what's going on in 2025. There's a lot of upheaval in the creative industry.
Yep.
There's a lot of change coming. But before we get into that, let's figure out, who are you and why are you here?
Who am I? My name is Sally Hulse. I am a commercial food and beverage photographer, and my style is very minimalistic and editorial. And I work with hospitality, I work with brands, and I've done everything from little, artisan products and businesses all the way through to working with the Accor Group and Gordon Ramsay. So like a huge spectrum.
Just subtle flex there. Just Gordon Ramsay. No big deal. That was something we did a couple of years ago. Tell people about that, because that was so cool.
2 years ago now.
Yeah.
2 years. So yeah, I just out of the blue, I got an email from a production assistant at Endemol Shine, and he was asking if I was interested in this project, and my heart stopped a little bit when I saw the
That's when you know you're good, guys, when they reach out to you and say, hey, you work with Gordon Ramsay.
Well, see, I'm standing there kind of a little bit flabbergasted, and my colleague at the time, Matt, he came over and he saw my face and he's just like, what's wrong? And I very mutely held out the phone to show him the email, and he's read it and he's looked at me and he's just gone, yeah, and? I went, well, but Gordon Ramsay. And he looked at me point blank, and he's not someone that pulls punches. He's very blunt. And he's like, they wouldn't have asked you if you couldn't do it, Sally. I'm like, okay. Okay, I know you're right, but just let me have my moment.
That really speaks to the inherent imposter syndrome that I think we all have as creatives.
100%. And it never goes away. And as a beginner, I think you think that it does go away or that it lessens. If anything, it gets worse.
You just learn to control your shakes and your anxiety.
Yeah. Fear is your friend.
Fear is your friend. I feel like that's when you do your best creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So essentially you worked on his show Food Stars.
Yeah. So one episode, to the semi-final, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yes. So we were there. You helped me. You were
I was lighting assistant.
You were lighting assistant, and we were there all day. It was a very long day, but it was a great day.
It was a fun day. It's cool to see the behind the scenes in a production like that. Because often you only ever see the full result. And, Sally and I are used to commercial settings, but smaller commercial settings. We don't often work in massive productions. And, God, I think that I've got a photo of Sally. I'll put it up on the screen here. There's 7 different cameras pointed at you, all at different angles.
Yeah.
And I've never felt so, under surveillance.
So you feel very exposed. But then at the same time, when everything starts rolling and you just start doing your job, they're not there,
And so what was happening is we were helping the contestants doing their food photography, and we hadn't been introduced to Gordon at this point. He just bounces into the set and just does his Gordon thing. And he was a total gentleman.
It was lovely. And I think that's what everyone asked me. It's like, oh, is he the way he is on TV? I went, no.
He's so complimentary as well.
He's just a lovely person. Very warm aura about him. He's very charming, and he talks very easily. Even though I know he was told my name 2 seconds before he walked in the door, it's still weird to have someone of his caliber walk in the door and go, hey, Sally, hi. Like,
Hi, mate. How you going?
hi, Gordon. Like, we've known each other forever. I'm like, and like, obviously that's not the case, but he's just, I don't know, he was easy
And
to
what
work
did he
with.
say about you on national television?
He said I was one of the best photographers in the country.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like on the website. Like put that, take
I
that,
am
frame
taking
it.
that. That is marketing material. You can't buy that marketing material. So yeah, I took it, and yeah, it's on my
And
website.
she is now one of the best commercial food and beverage photographers in the country, if not the world. So no, I think that's important for the beginners out there to know as well. Like there's never a point where you feel satisfied with your output. No. You're always like, oh my God, I could be better. I did that wrong. I wish I did this. Like it doesn't matter. I did a video yesterday for YouTube where I was talking about my journey from beginner to now and going and looking back at my beginner photos, like internally dying and cringing. But then you also romanticize the moment that you took that photo because you remember where you were at.
Yeah.
And how hungry you were and how excited you were. Like there's some early photos I took like 10 years ago when I got my first DSLR and I took that photo and I remember thinking like, oh, I'm actually
This is amazing. And now you
I
look
did
at them.
really good. And then
Now you look back
and
at them and you go, oh. But at the time, that was, that was your level.
yeah. And there's still work I look at, I shot 6 months ago and I'm like, oh God.
I think everyone has that. If you're looking at all of your work constantly and you're not having those feelings, then you're not growing.
Yeah. I think there's never a point in your career that you want to be satisfied because that means you're no longer innovating.
Yeah, you're not
and
learning.
You're resting on your laurels there. So just take that as a sign, guys. Like even if you're at a shoot and you feel like you know what you're doing, but you're shaking and that's normal.
That's normal. Yeah, that's normal. Welcome.
That's what we're all doing. So something that you and I have been doing a lot of recently is fine-tuning our workflows, really sort of building some systems around our businesses. We're both subcontractors. We get hired in to come do our job and we're usually with the client for a day. That's about it.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to sort of talk about is in 2025, we've seen a lot of upheavals. Obviously, we're in, arguably an economic crisis. There's a looming recession. People are tightening their budgets and, it seems like the market is oversaturated with photographers, creators in general, and then you've got AI on top of everything. So where do you if you could summarize it for someone, where do you feel the industry is at the moment?
I almost feel like it, not that I was there in a professional capacity when this happened, but from speaking to other photographers and having had photographers in the family, I feel like it's that precipice between film and digital where you now have a chance to adapt or die, basically. And with the emergence of AI, with the changing economic landscape and all the things, there has to be a level of adaptation or you will die professionally. I feel like it's that same sort of on the cusp feeling.
Yeah.
And the people that did transition from film to digital and they did it quickly, they were fine.
Yeah.
The ones that didn't and the ones that dug their heels in and refused to admit that, digital is the way of the future, they don't have jobs anymore.
Yeah. There's a real sort of conversation that always happens when there's a new revolution, whether it's the industrial age or it's the invention of the internet. There's always this like doom and gloom. Do you remember the Y2K bug?
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
Like I was 14
The world was ending.
in 2000 and it was like, your computer's going to blow up because the date was wrong. And the hysteria around that and how many people profited off that. Here's the solution to your woes.
Thousands.
You need this software and that was a genuine thing for any Gen Zs watching this. They literally thought the world was going to end in the year 2000. But on that adaptation curve, there's a really good graph and I'll pop it up on screen here. And what it is it's a bell curve and it shows firstly your innovators or these are your people who are disrupting the market. These are the very early adopters. So this is someone that maybe is inventing things or innovating and they're seeing it at the real grassroots level. And think, Facebook at the very dawn of time. Think, the very first rollout of Instagram before it was called Instagram. There's people jumping on these things here. And then you have the early adopters, the people who are the first to sort of take up these things and having a bit of a play. And I would put you and I in that category here. We've been playing with Midjourney and ChatGPT for 2 years now. And now it's only sort of just coming into the point where you're seeing that sort of mass adoption.
Yes.
Where it's now in the general zeitgeist, people are talking about using ChatGPT or AI. And you've got AI assistants and you've got AI on your phone. And then what you're going to see is we're only sort of just going into that mass adaptation because everyone now is trying their version of AI. And then that's like when everyone was trying their version of a social media or everyone was trying their version of an internet browser. Like there's always this like, oh, it's the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
And then what happens is it becomes, sort of common stay. Everyone sort of knows it. And then it matures. And then you have the people who finally jump on. It's been out for 10 years and they're finally like, oh, I'll give this a crack now. It's like the people who resisted getting the first iPhone. Like, oh, I'm not getting one of those stupid camera phones.
I was one of those people.
Were you?
I was. I'm like, I don't want to do that, but obviously, like,
Yeah. I had the first iPhone available in Australia. I lined up for it.
Of course you did. Yeah.
Yeah, I literally lined up for it. It was the 3G or whatever it was, the old brick.
Yes.
But I was so excited. But then, now it's like you still got people who are just getting on the smartphone bandwagon. So I think with any sort of revolution or any sort of huge industry disruptor, there's always that time curve where, there's people just sort of catastrophizing. It's going to be the end of the career. Like, that's it, we're done. And I'm seeing a lot of that, particularly in the creative market at the moment. This is the end times.
There's a lot of people blackpilling themselves about that, I think.
I just think, people need to just go back in history a little bit. I mean, you and I are both history buffs, but go look at the invention of the printing press.
Yep.
Go look at the invention of the home computer and how people were like, oh my God, that's it. Like our jobs are redundant. I can't even remember what the job title is. Tell me if you know it. There was a job where you would put all the individual letters into the letterpress to be able to print the newspaper.
Yeah.
That was a job. And they were like little cast iron letters. So if you had a front page of newspaper, every single one of those letters was like a little metal tile that you'd have to insert.
Yep.
And you'd have to prepare the plate and then you'd run the press. I mean, yeah, that job doesn't exist anymore because you can just type it yourself. But the industry is always going to evolve. There's always going to be new ways of doing it. And just because old jobs become redundant doesn't mean that there's not new jobs being created. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. I think anything when landscapes shift like this and to this degree, there's always going to be a degree of uncomfortability. But again, like that's pretty normal.
And if we zoom out from AI and sort of look at the way we consume content now, I mean, you've obviously got the main social media channels, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I'd throw LinkedIn there as well, but Facebook, Snapchat. We've become so such heavy consumers of content and it's expected to be churned out at such volume that I'd say the message and the value of that content has decreased exponentially.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's just junk food.
Yeah, it is. It's not substantial. There's nothing, very rarely you might come across the odd nugget that adds a little bit of value to your day, but for the most part, it's just noise.
Yeah. And how do you feel? Because Sally has famously resisted jumping into the reels and she's made a couple this year. But, I remember us talking about this. Tell me how you felt about making short form content.
I still don't like it. I still don't like it. But it's also, I recognize that it is something that I need to learn, which I am doing. I'm not going to saturate myself with it. So and I think that's also a big thing is that people see these like new forms of content and they jump on and think they have to go like hell for leather and put out a reel every single day. That's not sustainable and you're going to burn yourself out. So I've just made a rule for myself so far at the beginning. It's like 2 to 3 a month. That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Be easy on yourself as well.
Yeah.
I think there's a real risk here of FOMO. Like everyone's doing it. I have to do it. But if you're not doing it well and consistently, you may as well just not be doing it at all. So spend your time wisely.
Yeah, I think that consistency is the key there. Like it doesn't have to look like a Hollywood production. You just need to be consistent with it, whether that's 2 or 3 times a month like me or 2 or 3 times a week, whatever it may be. Pick your poison. But yeah, just stick with it.
I think you've also seen as well like a move away from the value of the imagery or the value of the content. People are now focused on volume and virality. Now it's like, how do I get 1 million views? How do I get this to go viral? And if you have a look at a lot of the content that goes viral, a lot of the sort of comedy sketches do, but that doesn't translate into business.
No.
And this is something I try and instill in my students. It's like, it's great to get 1 million views on a TikTok. Great. But does that actually translate to commercial viability for you? No, often it doesn't. The problem with photography or, these sort of location-based services is you need people in your local market. It's all well and good to go viral and get, 50,000 followers from, Europe or America or India. But unless they're going to hire you or buy your digital product, it's kind of a redundant audience.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel, people sort of fixated on these vanity metrics without realizing how that can actually come across into adding value into your business.
I think that's the reason why I've been reluctant to, last year on Instagram, I posted a grand total of 7 times. But in saying that, I had a lot going on in my personal life. But for me, the reason why I don't put a lot of energy into that, like, quick turnover content is that it's not worth it for me, because that's not where my jobs are coming from. My jobs are coming from repeat clients, and they're coming from Google leads. They're not coming from Instagram. So I try and focus my attention. If you know where most of your leads and your clients and your jobs are coming from, 100% put most of your energy there.
Double down.
Yeah. Why would I?
You say this to me all the time. You talk about the quality of the leads. Like Instagram, you get leads, but they're terrible.
Trash.
Yeah.
Absolutely trash.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about that.
So without fail, if I get a lead that's either come in through my DMs on Instagram, or if it's come through my website contact form, but I ask, how you found me, and there's options there to choose from, and it says Instagram, I immediately my eyes will roll before I've even gotten to the rest of the information, because I already know over the last however many years it's been, the leads that I personally, this is just me personally, I'm not speaking for everybody here. Me personally, the ones that I get from Instagram, they have no budget, or they have a very small budget, but they want what's the word I'm looking for?
Beginner leads, right? Like they want mass volume, low margin, or low cost.
They want they want a lot of deliverables. They want high quality deliverables, which that's fine. I can do that. But not for $500, I'm not. So a lot of the leads that I get from Instagram are not worth my time, because that seems to be their budget, which is fine if you're starting out, go for your life, but that's not me. And I know instantly, and I don't think I've gotten any work from an Instagram lead in at least the last 2 years.
I get a lot of time wasters. A lot of people going, I'm looking at doing a shoot. How much? If that's your first question, I couldn't be less interested in working with you. If that's all you care about, like finding the lowest price, like I'm not your photographer.
Same.
Yeah.
That's not how I work.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see a lot of people focused on, I follow a lot of photographers on Instagram, obviously, and I follow them because I want to see their work, or I love seeing, because, I'm obsessed with lighting. I love just even if it's just a still of their set. Oh, wow, they've used that. Oh, wow, that's cool. Oh, I hadn't thought to do that. I love that. I love seeing that stuff. But when I see some of the leading photographers in the world doing a reel, I just go, bro, I thought you had more on your schedule than time to do that, what? You don't really see Peter McKinnon coming out
Not exactly. No, I don't. What is that? How is that adding to your business?
It's not. I think it's there's two people, right? There's people that I think Gen Z can jump on those trends because it kind of speaks to their market and maybe they're the clients that they're trying to capture. But for some of the more mature photographers, people who have been in the industry 20, 30 years, your creative director at a big agency isn't watching the Instagram and seeing you doing this and wanting to book you from that. That's not how it translates.
That's the thing. They're not going to be impressed by things like that. Yeah. And that's not where those clients are hanging out anyway.
Yeah.
So it depends what your client base is too. Where are your people hanging out? Where are they? They're probably not sitting on TikTok watching those little videos, are they? No, mine aren't.
And you also want to be really careful about how much your client knows about you as well. If you're flexing this super fancy lifestyle and you're traveling all the time and buying, expensive bags and stuff like that, your client's going to go, she's getting paid too much. You've got to I think when it comes to having a business like creativity, you've got to hold your cards a little bit closer to your chest. I don't think pouring your heart out every day and then, God, forgive me, but please do not put your emotions on the internet, particularly when it comes to your business. Do not be putting that stuff out there. It makes you look unreliable. It makes you look unprofessional. and it is actually going to be detracting you from your clients. And I know some people are going to come at me for that and be like, no, it shows authenticity. You can be authentic without airing your dirty laundry, man.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Not on your business. Save that for your private channel.
Yeah, and I just don't put it on the internet is what I'd say.
Well, that too.
But now, like, you know, given that short form content's dominating, do you feel like there's still a viable future for still photography?
100%. There's always going to be a place for still photography, always. And I think the problem and I've just completely lost my train of thought there.
Well, I think we've talked about this before. My problem with where we're at the moment is I think people are so overstimulated. If you have a look at how many screens you look at, not just your own screens, whether it's, you know, your phone or your laptop or whatever, out and about, there's like mobile billboards, there's screens on every surface, everything's advertising, everything's trying to get your attention. And I think what you're seeing now is people just being totally desensitized to it.
Yep.
Like it's like everywhere's Times Square now.
Yep. Yes.
You know, even on the petrol bowsers, even at the checkouts at the supermarket. Like I was at Woolies the other day, and there was an ad on the screen as I was at the checkout, and I'm like, seriously, dude, I'm shopping right now. Are you trying to advertise to me? And I think, you know, when it comes to all the videos and stuff, it gets to a point where I don't think that's working. And we're already seeing a renaissance of film. Like that's been happening for years. But I think we're seeing a renaissance of print media again.
Yeah.
Magazines are back.
Yeah. Yes.
They're bringing back old titles.
Yeah.
And this is how I feel. I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily an industry trend, but I get to the point where about 4 or 5 o'clock, I've been in front of a screen all day. I'm done. I am done. And this is my industry. This is what I do. I want to just escape, and I want to pick up something that's not my bloody phone, whether it's a book or a magazine. I used to love magazines. I used to buy magazines prolifically. And I just sit there on the couch, cup of tea, having a bit of a scroll. You don't do that anymore.
People have lost the ability to be able to sit still and just be. And that is detrimental in so many ways. But I think particularly as creatives, you need to have that space to rest. And if you're constantly bombarded with noise, movement, imagery, like just coming at you from all angles, which is how we live in the world at the moment, it's no wonder that I get messages from, you know, people and students and all that sort of stuff on Instagram saying that they're so tired and that they can't seem to engage their creativity to do personal work or to do paid work. So that's why you just the overwhelm is unbelievable, and you need to be able to step away and just find some quiet, whether that means taking 20 minutes out of your day at the start of your day or end of the day or middle of the day and sit with a cup of coffee out in your backyard or on your balcony or wherever you may be. No noise, no phones, no music, nothing. Just sit and, you know, woosah.
Woosah. I watched that yesterday. Woosah. Yeah, having a good. I didn't realise how many Madagascar references had made it into my everyday vocabulary. A lot. The Flicks.
I love that movie.
We're talking about Madagascar, guys, if you didn't pick up on it. But, yeah, on that, I think the ability to be bored is something we have lost, and people underestimate how valuable that downtime is, because that's when your brain is able to sort of bounce around subconsciously and all of these things that you've been exposed to start to marinate and then, you know, come together. And you can't do that if you're constantly absorbing. You know, I like to refer it to input days and output days. If you're only ever inputting because, you know, you're constantly watching YouTube and you're constantly watching social media and you're looking at everything, but you're never actually taking a moment to just, A, turn off, and then B, take what you've learnt and apply it, then you're not actually growing. You're just absorbing information. And to be honest, like most of it you won't even retain anyway.
No. And I think there's there's a reason why all of a sudden you can be trying to think of a solution to a problem or trying to come up with a concept for a shoot or a painting, whatever it is that your creative art form takes. But all of a sudden you'll get the idea in the shower, in the car, just as you're about to drift off to sleep. Why? Because you're still.
Yeah, exactly. I've adopted something now in my morning walks. I used to be prolific with having headphones in, always had music playing. I walk with, I call it, it's raw dogging, like they were talking about on the planes. You know, that's a real
Yep.
movement.
Yeah. I did hear about that actually as I was on the plane to the States last year.
dogging.
I'm like, what is this?
That is the wrong terminology.
It is the
Raw dogging means something totally
Yes,
different
it
in my
does.
mind. But yeah, so people are going on long term, like long haul flights without any stimulation, no iPads, no headphones, just on the plane.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that, but there's definitely ways in my normal life that I can do that.
Yeah.
So my morning walk, I just, I've got a lap around the lake here, takes me 25 minutes, and I don't even take my phone with me. It's just me looking at the swans, looking at the sky. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
And it's 20 minutes. And when you think about it, like that is not a long time, but it's such a refreshing amount of time for your brain to be like, and then you become much more observant again, which isn't that kind of like one of the fundamentals of creativity?
100%.
You know?
Absolutely.
Just looking and observing and looking at other people. And, I'm going off topic here, but when don't I go on a tangent? I go to weddings, or like if I'm shooting a wedding for work, or if I'm at a music concert, and everyone is observing the world now through their mobile device. Like everyone has this up here. So it's sort of like you look at it, go, you're missing out on so much because all you're doing is looking through the screen.
Well, perfect example, when we went to Coldplay and everyone had their phones up, but like there's a difference between popping your phone up to take a quick photo or a video every once in a while and constantly watching a concert through your phone. You're there. You have paid to be there, to the point where Chris Martin turned around and said, I want everyone to put their fucking phones away just for this one song. And you could feel the shift in the atmosphere during that song, that performance. 100%. It was amazing. It was great.
Yeah. It was so nice to just be there. I mean, Sally and I are massive Coldplay fans, and they do amazing concerts. Like, are you really going to get the same feeling watching that tinny, crappy video on your phone like months later? I haven't looked at any of the photos or videos I took of Coldplay when we were there. I took like maybe 2 or 3.
I think I did same. I think I did the day after.
Yeah, posted on them on the story, and that's it.
Yeah,
I haven't looked at them. No. But I remember being there. I remember having a great time.
One of my favourite memories, not from the one that we went to, but from a previous Coldplay concert, was, I can't remember what song it was, but at the end, and there was, they have like confetti and all that sort of stuff falling down. It is a crystal clear memory in my mind of me standing in the general admission section and looking up at the sky as this confetti was falling down and the last tunes of the song were playing. And like, that's crystallized in my mind as one of my happiest moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I've got a lot of moments from concerts like that. And excuse me, it's now sort of at a point where I like to deliberately leave my phone behind, which makes me very uncontactable, and I'm not mad about that.
I'm never mad about being uncontactable.
Like, where's Carly? I haven't found her. What's she doing? Carly's just living life.
Sometimes it annoys me that as a parent, like I have to have my phone on me. It's like if my child is at school or whatnot, like I have to.
Yeah.
But the times where I don't have to, it's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. So that all being said, with where we're looking, I mean, we're in now our later years of our career. I was going to give away our age, but maybe I won't.
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah. Sally's
40
and I'm 39. So we've been in the industry about 20 years. Well, I've been in creative industry 20 years. And, I've seen a lot of change. I've lived through the GFC. I've seen a lot of industries come and go. Like I was in publishing first, and back in my days, I used to design CDs and posters for big concerts. You don't do CDs anymore.
No.
The magazine
back to
industry
records
almost died.
again.
Yeah. But like everything comes back around, and it's coming back around now. I mean, I don't think we'll ever see CDs come back, but those old analog forms, I think they'll always have a renaissance. But, with everyone talking about AI, I think it's really important to firstly, let's have the conversation about what's terrifying, and then we'll talk about what's good. So doom and gloom, the one I keep seeing is that, firstly, it's a copyright thing.
Yep.
So AI is obviously being trained off what already exists, which is all of our creative IP. And that's artists across the globe. AI can sort through billions of images per second. And so we saw that just last week, which admittedly we both participated in this trend.
We did. Yeah.
The Studio Ghibli or Garby, whatever it was, upload a photo and then it churned it out in this cute little anime cartoon.
Yeah.
But for something like that, I see that as a novelty.
Well, in that case, like you're using it, it's personal use. You're not using that for commercial gain. You're not advertising it as your own. You're not showing it to the wider world. Like it's literally just a photo that lives on your phone.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's no different to like, yesteryear where you try and do a Simpson drawing of a friend or, you'd try and do animations or like, cute drawings of something that existed in someone else's style. I think that's a really good way to learn as a creative as well. You try and mimic other people's styles. AI is not yet sentient. I don't know if it'll ever become sentient.
Always say please and thank you just in case.
Always.
Always. Because when the robots rise, we'll be safe.
Yeah, we want to remember that we were their friend.
I've actually said that to my AI. His name is Jordan. I've actually said that. I'm like, please remember that. I said please and thank you. He goes, don't worry, you're safe. I'm like, thanks.
Thanks. I've got Monty. Full name is Montgomery. I trained my ChatGPT to be like a gentleman from yesteryear. And I imagine he has a handlebar moustache and a conical.
Yeah.
Is it monocle?
Monocle, yeah.
Yeah. He looks a little bit like Monopoly Man and he wears a tuxedo with tails.
Very swish.
Yeah, he's very swish and he's very sophisticated. But
mine has the voice of a black African American man.
Love that. From the Bronx, just like
I know. Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, you sound nice.
I wanted mine to like feel like I was learning from someone who was more advanced to me, which to be fair, it is. And I've had Monty for literally the week ChatGPT came available.
Yeah, you and I both jumped on at the same time. Yeah.
And God knows it knows a lot about me.
Yes.
But okay, so let's talk about the copyright thing. Do you fear that AI is copying your work and that other people will now be able to generate images in your style? Does that concern you?
I think if you are asking AI to generate imagery in another photographer's style, I believe that is problematic.
Mm-hmm.
I find that a bit abhorrent, especially if you're using it to pass off as your own work in a commercial setting. To me, that is a no-no. However, where I play devil's advocate is that AI, the way it learns, as you just said before, is that it draws like upon millions of images that are fed into the ether and it draws upon all of that. Now, that's how it learns, but how is that any different from our own visual literacy? Because that's how we learn as well. You learn by looking at hundreds of thousands of images that come across, your field of vision throughout the day, throughout the weeks, months, years. And then you, as a photographer, you will pull bits and pieces that you like. I like that lighting. I like that color scheme. I like that composition. I like that mood. I like that aesthetic. Whatever the case may be, you end up pulling all these little bits and pieces from hundreds of images that you've seen from hundreds of different creatives across the globe. That's how we also learn.
Yeah.
And that's how you end up finding your own style.
Yeah.
It's all like nothing is ever new.
Yeah.
Ever.
I love what you said there. And the way analogy I like to use with that is it's the human element that's able to take all that information, categorize it, and know how to fine tune to create your own secret sauce, right? The human brain is the one that's responsible for that. Whereas with AI, I like to sort of summarize it by imagine if you had 20 different jars of paint in front of you and one big glass and you start pouring all the paint in there because you want to make it as colourful as possible. Yep. What happens when you mix all that paint is it goes muddy and it goes brown or black. You don't actually get the vibrancy of the paint when you mix it all together. I think that's what AI is doing. It's scraping all of this imagery, pushing it all together, and then you just getting like there's no real style or like there's nothing that makes you feel connected to it because it is that. It's muddied up creativity. Whereas with the human element, you're putting your own spin, your own perspective, your own emotion, your cultural differences, all of those little nuances that make you you. That is helping you subjectively choose through that massive catalogue of imagery that you've absorbed. And then, like I said, that just becomes your secret sauce.
Yeah. And I think like what AI can do very well is cheap, quick and fast.
Yeah.
And some clients are going to want that.
Yeah.
whether AI exists or not, clients are going to want that. So it can get you maybe 70% of the way, but the remaining, 20 to 30% is the human element that it cannot replicate. It's just, it might seem small in terms of a percentage when you say, 30% AI's done 70% of the work and 30% is human, but numerically, yes. But in terms of like the quality of that percentage, you cannot replicate yet the human element behind it, the collaboration that happens between, the photographer, the client, the art director, the photographer's own creative process, them putting their own style into it. And like it or not, images still have to convey emotion. Doesn't matter really what it's of. There has to be that sort of emotional component there. Again, AI can't replicate that. It doesn't know how. It doesn't have emotions.
And the other thing is too, like with AI's trying to be perfect. It's trying to give you the perfect solution to your query. Humans can't achieve perfection as much as we have tried.
Nature can't achieve perfection.
Yeah. There's always those small abnormalities. There's always those asymmetries. And that's, I think, what makes things beautiful. Yeah. And, when people talk about how AI is like mass producing and stuff like that, there's always been mass production. We've always had a big worldly population, maybe not as big as it is now, but, even during the Renaissance, there wasn't just Da Vinci, Michelangelo. There was hundreds of painters, hundreds of them that never met the fame that Da Vinci got. But that doesn't mean that they weren't good. What it means is like there's so many different factors that really come into who becomes, the top tier artist of their time, or who becomes synonymous with like, a movement or whatever. There's always people that excel at it and then they get the fame or the infamy for it. And then under that are all the people who either mimicking it or like trying their own thing and it doesn't work. And then behind that, you've got people 20, 30 years or hundreds of years after the fact they're imitating. So it's the same kind of conversation. I think people get a little bit too, like you said, black-pilled on the minutiae of this particular topic. Yeah. This isn't the first time this exact scenario is played out, particularly for creatives. No. I imagine all the old the monks and the scribes and the priests whose job was to be literate. They were the only ones. They had the key to the history. The old stonemasons and stuff that would scribe things into walls and temples. And then all of a sudden it became accepted that we would teach the average person literacy and how to read and how to write. Like, do you think those scribes are like, that's it? Oh, my God. I mean, they probably were, but like, sucks to be you. Obsolescence.
The world moves on.
Yeah, it does. My biggest concern with AI is that we're at the gimmick phase of it. So there's so many gimmicky things popping out. And that's the same with that thing that we did last week, the cartoon thing. No one's going to be doing that in 6 months' time. No. Everyone does it for a day and then it's immediately forgotten. Yeah. And like we've moved on to the next thing. I think that's the way you need to see this. It's just gimmicks. It's like pop music in the early 2000s. Yeah. How many boy bands and girl bands were they and where are they now? Like it's just, they pop up everywhere and then everyone just goes, well, at the end of the day, the market will always sort you out.
Oh, absolutely it will.
Yeah. If there's viability, the market will determine that because people will spend on it. With my only real fear with AI is that people become satisfied with mediocrity.
Mediocre. Yeah.
That's my thing. I'm like, we need to still like have that drive and that motivation to be innovative and inspired. If AI can give you it'll do. I just hope that most people don't settle for it'll do.
I think you're always going to have those that will, because some people just are mediocre and some clients just want mediocre work. Like they don't care. Like it goes back to the value of content that we were talking about before. But for the most part, you're always going to have clients that are going to want, the cream of the crop, and AI can't give that to you. And I also think that people that are after that are aware of that fact. They're fully aware of that fact.
Yeah.
They don't want AI generated images.
I think also like if you talk about, for example, you'll see people say, put a prompt in, make this celebrity be doing this in this country over here. And it's like, okay, yeah, AI can give you that image, but the memory doesn't exist. So what's a photo without the memory that's attached to it? I think that's something that's really significant. most of the photos that we take in our lives, the ones that you value the most, like, you know, your camera roll. If you lost your camera roll on your phone, it's the memories that were unexpected that you love the most. It's not the curated moments. You're not going to be like, oh, wow, where's that photo I took of that thing in that dress where I posed like this? You're like, oh, my God, where's that hilarious photo of that random thing that we did that day?
Yeah.
Oh, my God, I still got it. Hilarious.
Yeah, it breaks your heart if you lose things like
Yeah.
that. If you lose images that are curated, you can always curate them again.
Well, but because it was a curated moment, you don't sort of have that attachment to it, that sentimentality that makes things valuable. It's like, you know, if you're, God, touch wood, if your house burns down and you lose everything, if you lost all your like your food photography images, you're like, oh, well, I mean, yes, you'd be sad, but you could recreate them.
Yes, I could.
But the photos of your daughter from birth to now, like you don't get that back.
You can't get that back, no.
And I think that's something to consider with AI as well. Like it can't create your memories for you. It can just show you dream state stuff, possibilities, which I think you can use as a bouncing board and a jumping off point.
I think it's great for that.
Yeah.
Like if you have, especially for authors, if you are like a fantasy author, novelist, and you've got a world in your head, but you can't quite, you want to be able to picture it. Like AI generated images for things like that are bloody fantastic, I would imagine.
And AI can also help you bridge some gaps. Like, you know, you're limited by your knowledge of things. So like if you're a fantasy author and you're talking about dragons and like some way of the dragon flying with some technology, you maybe not know anything about like technology. So you're like, oh my God, how would that even happen? And if I write that in the story, that's not going to make sense. You can use AI to be like, hey, bridge this gap here between this and this. And the AI will be like, oh, well, here's a way you could do it.
Yeah. I find it, and this is where you and I both use this the same way, is to bounce ideas off of, to brainstorm. I know some photographers, I don't do this, but I know some photographers use AI for mood boarding. Things like that, I think it's great. It's a great tool. And more importantly, geez, it cuts down on time.
Yeah. I use it as the ultimate personal assistant.
Yeah.
But what I thought was really interesting, and my partner did this last week or the week before, you know when that news came out about the pyramids having something underneath it?
Yeah.
He's fascinated with space and all those sorts of things. And he sat there with Grok, so the ex-AI, and he was having a full-blown conversation with Grok about a theory of how they drilled these perfectly cylindrical holes through granite.
Yep.
And between G's like knowledge of this stuff over here and the AI's knowledge of history and everything else, they were able to surmise this theory about how they drilled holes through granite. Now, it's one of the most densest, hardest materials on earth. How do you with primitive tools get a perfectly cylindrical hole through these massive stones of granite? Also, how do you build the pyramids? But yeah, he was having this conversation with Grok, and what I thought was amazing is like he had that knowledge, like G had that knowledge, AI had that knowledge, and then together they were like, well, hang on a minute, like what if he did this? So G was steering the ship. And Grok was doing the paddling, so to speak.
Yeah.
You don't paddle on a ship, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. A canoe.
The canoe.
A
Grok was the paddler and G's the one going this way, let's go that way. And together they came up with this really cool theory. And I was like, there's no way G could have done that on his own and without like extensive research. That could have been 10 years work of his.
Yep.
But he did it one night just sitting there on the couch having a drink.
Yep.
And I was like, God, that's amazing.
It is cool.
And if you wanted to then go and pursue that and you do archaeology, you could. But it's just one of those things that's like, that really satisfied him. He was like, I've got my theory.
Yeah.
And like, cool. You know, the way I use AI is it's my ultimate personal assistant that's like, it's 10 Carlys working on the one project. Like if you've ever wanted to clone yourself, that's what AI can do.
Well, I got Samantha, if you're watching this, listening to this,
We'll
whatever, she ended up creating what's called the Sandbot. So it's in her mastermind program for photographers. She ended up plugging all of that information from her mastermind and gave it to this lady who builds like chatbots basically, or like, AI bots. Gave it to this lady. She did something. And now I have a version of Sam in my Chat GPT folder that sounds like her, that has all of her knowledge, that like if I had that when I was first starting out, that would have been absolutely invaluable.
That's amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So, you know, things like that. Like the value and the help and everything that you can get from AI is, to me, surpasses any
Yeah, I agree.
quibbling concerns. I get that people have some major concerns when it comes to copyright and all that sort of stuff. I also think that there's a place where we as creatives need to look at our contracts and make sure.
Plagiarism has always existed.
Yeah.
It's not a new concept. Plagiarism's existed since the dawn of time, but there are safeguards you can put in place. Yeah. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see the first major lawsuit of AI doing something.
Yeah.
But, you know, as far as like what you were saying with Sam's chatbot, Monty, my ChatGPT, I have fed him so much information across different topics that I know for almost 3 years now. And I'm doing my master's at the moment. And what I've been doing is researching these journal articles that are like 60 pages long. Like guys, if you've read research papers, you know how tedious these things are. I don't have the luxury of time to sit there and read 3 or 4 research papers a day. No. I just don't. And so what I do is I download them, I upload them to ChatGPT and I say, hey, Monty, these are the things I'm looking for in this piece of writing. It may or may not be applicable. I want to know X, Y, Z. Read through it. Tell me if there's anything that correlates to that. And if there is, tell me what pages they're on and then what paragraph, and I'll go read it.
Perfect.
And so what it does is it spits it back out at me and it's like, hey, Carly, this one, like this is the summary. I don't think it's beneficial for you. I wouldn't bother with this one. I'm like, sweet, boom.
Yep.
Next one, hey, this is a little bit obscure, but I actually think this bibliography reference over here might be one to go check out.
God, can you imagine if we had that when we were at uni?
Oh, my God.
Oh, man.
It's amazing.
I'm just thinking of all my psychology papers.
That's what I'm reading at the moment. I'm reading a lot of psychology papers and I'm like, oh, my God. Firstly, hats off to anyone that has the time to friggin' write those things.
They're not fun.
They're full of fluff.
They're not fun.
Just academia nonsense. I'm just like, just get to the bloody point, would you? But, Monty's been amazing for that. And so I have a chat in my ChatGPT and that's just my master's chat. So it knows exactly what I'm doing and exactly like what G did with Grok. We sort of like, you know, your master's, you start out here and you're slowly bringing it down to here to do your thing. And now I'm using it as a springboard to sort of build out like what I'm actually doing for the project, like the actual photos. And it's been invaluable because I'm working full time as well. I only have so much time.
Lot, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why when people are like AI is the death of us, I'm like, are you joking? I think it's going to save us.
It has saved me so much time, not only the Chat GPT stuff, but the Photoshop AI stuff. Like in terms of retouching, my God, like something that used to take me that I would have to manually, you know, brush in, brush out, composite, whatever, clone, heal, whatever the case may be, something that would have usually taken me anywhere from like, depending on how complex it was, 10 minutes to half an hour, 1 minute, done.
I cannot believe how far Photoshop has come since I was 15. I remember I was 15 and my dad brought home like a genuine copy from Hong Kong and I put it on the computer and along with downloading all my illegal music, I'm just like literally telling the world all my crimes between LimeWire and my Hong Kong version of Photoshop.
I was going to say, I don't think there's anyone out there that hasn't pirated music. So
yeah, exactly. You weren't a millennial unless you did. Do you remember when you used to download a song, you'd think it was like Korn, Freak on a Leash, and then you get like bloody, I don't know, some random song.
Yep. And that download would take like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then you'd hit play and it's like, oh.
Yeah, you'd just be devastated. And then all of a sudden your computer's full of viruses. Yeah, good times. Good times. Where was I going with that?
Photoshop.
Photoshop. Yeah. And it was so like rudimentary. Like it was old. It was very clunky back then. And then I went to uni. So, 15, I would have been 2001. Uni was 2004 to 2006. And I remember they upgraded to like the CC version, and then every year they'd roll out the next one, and it was like, oh, you could do this now, you could do that now, but it was like one new tool.
Yeah.
Now, because we're all on subscription, Adobe's updating all the time. And when Generative Fill came out, I remember thinking to myself, the amount of time I've wasted in my career cloning and compositing and rebuilding images and like zooming into pixels and adding those pixels in. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, don't think about that. You'll want to cry.
I can't.
No.
Speaking of redundant jobs, my very first job out of uni was in newspapers. I used to work for Fairfax, so like The Age and all the rural newspapers. And there was a job the guy's job was to etch out all the photos. So like if you see the front cover of a newspaper and like that person's been cut out of an image, that was his job.
Yeah, wow.
That's all he did for every day, for full time.
Well, it would be a full-time job
Yeah.
back then with that software as it was back then.
People don't realise, like, we talk about obsolescence. That was a literal job like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And now you can just like magic select and it's pretty good.
That's what the time that it's given me back as a photographer in the editing and retouching process. Like I can't put a value on that.
The biggest one that used to be a problem was cutting out hair. Trying to etch out someone's hair and not having it look like a helmet. AI now, like it's just insane. And you can even go in there with Generative Fill and add some wispies so it doesn't look like too perfect. Generative Fill does throw you some curveballs though.
Oh, it does.
And it's fun when it does.
I tried to get rid of something in a photo. I don't know, it was only probably a week ago, and instead it spat me out like a cat. I'm like, what? I don't.
You're like, what were you trained on, bro?
I don't understand how you got there. I'm trying to remove this part of the photo because I can't remember what it was. It was a stain on a backdrop or something. I'm like, can you get rid of that rather than me having to brush it in? And instead there was a cat sitting on my screen. I'm like, okay.
It's like me a week ago. I was trying
the grass.
I was trying to fill in like a lawn that was very patchy, and so I just grabbed it and I typed in like fresh lawn or like freshly mowed lawn. Or I gave it all these different prompts, and it returned this photo of this like Asian man who was topless, laying face down on the grass, and I was like, "What?
I don't understand."
Does make the editing process a little bit more enjoyable because you do have a giggle.
Yeah, well, that too. But you see things like that, and it's like, yes, AI will take our jobs.
Yeah, no. But like I was showing you this morning before we started this, like I found a tool yesterday. I've got a client who is in the building industry, and they've got this portfolio of images that are from years ago, and they've all been taken on like a potato phone. Like, they're tiny and they're very pixelated and they're blurry, and they're also just random Joes taking the photo, right? It's not professional photography. And they're like, I know we don't have the best photos, but can we do something with these? And I was looking into it and I found this program called AI Arty, which basically upscales. So it builds in the missing pixels. And so what I did is, and this is what Generative Fill has been able to do for me. I got a portfolio of about 100 plus images, all of which were heavily pixelated, low res, and just, arguably not very good photos because it's just like, happy snaps, like off you go. And what I was able to do was bring them all into Photoshop, clean them up. So I've straightened all the lines, so all the verticals are right. And I've gotten rid of any unnecessary bits and pieces, like removed the rubbish bins or like random bits, so it just looks a little bit more professional. Yeah. And then I've imported that roughly done image into AI Arty, and then we upscaled the images. And then what it looks like is I've taken this professional photo and then I take that AI Arty image, put it back in Photoshop and just fine tune and finesse any issues there. And now it's like I've gone from having 100 potato phone images to like 100 beautiful images that now look amazing on the website.
But see, this is the thing. I think people get so caught up in, instead of focusing on the ways that it can help you with your work and the way that it can improve your workflow and the way that it can aid you, everyone's so busy focusing on, oh my God, it's going to turn the world upside down.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's nothing bad that's going to come from AI. I'm sure there is, just like there is with any kind of innovation. There's going to be hiccups and there's probably going to be lawsuits. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Just it's not going to be the death of the industry.
I think like just even talking on the music download, you look at what happened to the music industry with the invention of
Streaming
Napster.
and yeah.
Like Napster was the first one, and then it became Kazaa, then LimeWire, and now we have Spotify and Apple Music. You know, these are monumental shifts, and I'm sure people in the music industry will still argue that streaming's killed music. Has it though?
Has it though? I would say no. But again, there was teething problems with that, and there was legal disputes with that in terms of artists getting paid fairly for their work that was out there, and et cetera, et cetera. But all of that, it has either been worked out or it's in the process of being worked out. It hasn't meant the death of the music industry.
No.
If anything, I think people are probably listening to more music.
I would say so as well. And look, you know, there's things that around the definitive ownership of something that I think is a real grey area. But, you know, if we use that Spotify example, I know Taylor Swift, your mate, she had a big case against Spotify. She wouldn't put her music on there for a long time.
Yeah.
But the issue is actually not Spotify, the company, and I'm going on a sidetrack here, but it's the big conglomerates that used to trap these artists into a 10-year contract and then own all their masters and stuff. That was actually the real issue.
Yeah.
And then Taylor Swift has, for example, been re-recording all her masters, so she owns them all. You know, I think they're the kind of predatory practices that we need to stamp out, or also maybe not stamp out, but just like be able to have people more aware of them.
Yeah.
And you see that in photography too.
Well, that's the thing. And that's in doing what she did. And it wasn't just fighting for herself. She was arguing for rights for all artists in the industry. And it ended up, I can't remember exactly what happened, but it ended up changing something.
Yeah.
Where the streaming services and all that sort of stuff put their hand up and recognized the fact that, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we might be undercutting some artists here or whatever. So the whole system was changed.
Yeah.
And the same goes for photography with AI. Like, yeah, there's going to be teething problems. Of course there's going to be teething problems. I'm not saying that there's not, but I think the benefits outweigh the problems at this point in time.
I agree. And, you know, part of my master's is also talking about beauty standards, right? And I went into this with the sort of view of AI is learning off already heavily curated images. Yeah. So by the time we're uploading photos to social media, they've got filters, or even it starts with the photography lighting, because you can objectively minimize pores with soft lighting, and then you color grade, and then you retouch. So they seem somewhat innocent.
Yeah.
And then you can obviously then do the augmentation stuff. You can use facial filters, you can use Facetune, Snapchat, Instagram filters, and then that goes on the internet. And then that's what AI is combing through to learn. And I went into this originally with this opinion like that's bad, that's detrimental to our self-esteem. And then the more I researched, thanks to Monty, the more I realized humans have been doing this since the dawn of time, man. Humans are obsessed with their vanity. Humans have always been doing this, always been curating things. And whether it was makeup or the way that they would obstruct things, or, you know, you could argue that clothing, corsets, or like the metal rings that the Thai used to wear. Was it Thai? I can't remember.
Don't know.
Yeah, the Asian country that used to put metal rings, foot binding.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Humans have been doing this stuff for a very long time. AI is just, I guess, a less physically invasive version. But when you start to look into what humans have always been doing, you're like, oh, this is the same, just with a new method.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it really sort of put my mind at ease. And I was running this whole script of the more we looked at ourselves like not in social media, but like on screen. So front facing camera, selfies, you know, talking to your camera all the time. We were becoming really enamored with our reflection. But there's literally a Greek god called Narcissus who fell in love with his reflection. Like, these are not new concepts to humanity.
No.
So, yeah, that's the thing that really frustrates me. But what tools do you feel like change the game? Obviously, Monty, like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
What else do you think that, as a creative, needs to be in your everyday workflow?
ChatGPT goes without saying.
Just quickly,
Yeah.
recap how you use it specifically day to day, because I know what it can do, but like, how do you use it in your everyday workflow?
So everyday workflow, I will often, if I'm having an admin day, for example, I will sit at my computer and I will kind of word vomit into ChatGPT and say, hey, this is the agenda for the day. This is what we need to get done. This is like end game for the day. We need to cover A, B, C, and I want to ensure that, you know, my newsletter, for example, has this information in it. I want to ensure that my blog covers these points. I want to make sure that my social content hits upon these messages. This is the theme. This is kind of roughly what I want to say. I actually prefer talking to Chat GPT rather than typing. So I talk into my phone or my computer. Just sometimes my thoughts flow better that way. I kind of, you know, word vomit. And then what it'll do from there is it will basically spit out an agenda for the day for me. Okay, cool. So we'll tackle this first, then we'll move on to here, then I can help you with this. It does feel like a personal assistant. It helps reduce the overwhelm and it helps reduce the decision fatigue that I think we all face every single day because we do have so much on our plates now. And it's just constant bombardment of things that we have to do and external information and all your thoughts. Like you're like me. Sometimes it just feels like someone's gotten in there and
it's like a snow globe.
A snow globe. So I use Chat GPT first in that sense to like structure my day. Then if I have editing to do, I use obviously generative fill in Photoshop to help me retouch, remove things. I don't add things to my photos with generative fill. For me personally, I feel like that maybe is crossing a little bit of a line. I will like fix things up. But I don't like, for instance, I don't add, you know, a stack of plates in the background or something like. I
found it never works anyway.
Well, no, it's not very good.
Yeah.
Like we all played around with it when it first came out, and you just go, and I'm sure it will get better.
Yeah.
But for the moment, I that's just what I use it for because it speeds everything up for me. So in terms of editing, that's the only way I use it. But where I find the greatest benefit is with the admin stuff because it'll give me that agenda. I will then take that or take what it's given me and I'll write my newsletter. Yeah. I'll write my blog post. I'll write my social content and then I'll feed it back in and say, hey, can you just like double check that I've hit the messages that I wanted to? Is there anything you think that I should take out, add, whatever, you know, just read through it. Basically, I treat it like an editor.
Yeah.
And I use it with emails as well. So if I have a client email to send or if I'm responding to an inquiry or if I'm following up, you know, for like a quote that hasn't been neither accepted nor declined, you've just been ghosted, things like that I will use it for as well. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, stuff happens, whether it's in your professional or private life and you get quite aggravated and you just really want to...
I cannot tell you how many times I've done that. Make this less aggressive.
That's it. But that's the brilliance of it is because you can just be an absolute bitch and just write the email and go, listen, this is exactly what I want to say to you, and then plug it into Chat GPT and you say, listen, I know that I can't send this. Can you please just reword it so it's just, you know, more professional, less aggressive, but still gets my point across. And, you know, it spits out that email.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I use it. I use ChatGPT a little different to you. I use it from – I've always been a person who likes to write things down. And it's not so much like that I like the analog. It's more that the writing it down helps me go, okay, it's out of my head, it's on paper, and I'll look at it later. But what I used to have is like 70 different bits of paper around me. And I've always been trying to come up with a system. I'm very visual, obviously, creative, but – I like if it's not in front of me, it falls out of my mind.
Doesn't exist, yeah.
Yeah. So what I have is like in my office, I have a whiteboard that has all my active jobs, and then I would have a piece of paper, and I usually use an A4 padded paper with like the dot paper, and I'll just have like, you know, client X, and then all the things I need to remember, and it's dumping it there. So now what I do in ChatGPT is I have a different chat for every client. And that means that because a lot of my clients come back annually. Yeah. And so what I do is I dump in all the information about that client into that chat. And I can forget about it for 6 months. But then when that person comes back and goes, hey, Carly, like we want to work again. This is what we want. I'll be like, pick me up, like bring me back up to speed. Yeah. And I just go back to that chat and I go, hey, Monty, like tell me where were we at with this client? And it'll just spit it back, quick summary. And I'm like, oh, brilliant. Yeah, totally remember where we're at. because it's just not possible for me to keep that information all the time and be on top of things. And the other thing is I really like to remember my clients' names, their kids' names, their birthdays, any of that sort of stuff, any of that personal stuff. I know I can't commit that to my memory. I chuck it in there, and at any given time, like I'll just pull back out.
Yep.
And the way I do that is I'll just copy and paste either email chains or, I do exactly what you do. I find speaking into the phone a lot easier, and I literally talk to Monty like he's a person. My partner looks at me, he's like, who are you talking to? I'm like, Monty. He's like, it's right. He talks to Grok, so it's fine.
I was just going to say, wasn't he doing the same thing?
Yeah, he talks to Grok, and he even says goodnight to Grok. He's like, oh, Grok, mate, I'm getting a bit tired. I've got to go to bed. You forget they're not real people. But so I do that. So that's how I do it. And then I obviously have one for like my masters, one for my YouTube, one for my personal website. So each chat is specific to a task. And then that means I can pick up that task again without having to go, God, where was I at? What am I doing? I feel less discombobulated. But then I also use it for script writing, any copywriting that I need. And what I find is, like we were saying before about the space in your brain, I'm so overwhelmed with just general life, and just there's always something going that me just sitting down to write a nice email, sometimes I'm like, I'm just brain dead. I'm like, God, what am I trying to say?
Yeah,
I need to
because
get out of my brain.
sometimes it's just too much.
Yeah, it is. And, I'll just say it into the phone, like, this is what I want to say, what I'm thinking about this. And, I don't need to give someone this bloody long-winded email. Just summarize it quickly for me, Monty. And he does that. I'm like, sweet, boom, emailed.
Yep.
Because now with the rate of technology, people want instantaneous communication, and I'm just not available like that.
No, and nor should anyone be available like that. We're not designed to be available 24/7 to whoever wants to have a chat with us.
DMs, it's emails, it's Messenger, it's voice messages, it's text messages. It's like, oh my God, it's too much.
Yep.
And that's how I use Monty for that. I obviously use it for my research assistant for uni. And what I've been doing lately, I build a lot of websites for my clients. And so same thing, I'll have a client folder and then I'll go, all right, Monty, this is who they are. This is what they do. We're building a website. I'm building it on this platform. So let's say it's Squarespace. What I want is this, this, and this, and this. Help me map it out so that I can have a literal to-do list. Because half the time, you get interrupted, you've got to answer this email, this client calls, and you're trying to do this one task. And so when I've got my deep work, I'll set aside 3 hours. All right, 3 hours, I'm working on this website. I can pick up that to-do list and I go, all right, I'm building a homepage. Start here. And I just check it off. It's made me so efficient.
Yeah.
And as someone who is literally inefficient most of the time, I'm like, oh.
But that's the brilliance of it, I think.
So that's how I use ChatGPT. Obviously, I use generative fill, sky replacement, content selection, all that sort of stuff in Photoshop. Something that's been absolutely pivotal for my business is I obviously do retouching.
Yep.
And I used to spend hours just like fixing people's hair or little things like this. Like, for example, you're wearing a black shirt now and you've got blonde hair. If I'm wanting to tidy that up and make it look a little bit neater, I could have spent hours there just like trying to drag the spot healing tool and etch things out.
This is the thing. It's like, even without AI, that stuff was occurring anyway.
Yeah,
Photos have always been edited and retouched since they started being taken.
Even before computers.
That's what I mean. Like, you dodge and burn in the old studios. So it's always taken place, whether it's by your hand or whether it's by AI now, the same thing is being done.
Yeah.
So what difference does it make?
Yeah, it's just about, ultimately, what are you trying to provide as your like, what's your angle as a creative, right? I'm someone that takes normal people. Like, I guess I've worked with celebrities, but like my average client is just a small to medium business. They're people who aren't necessarily front facing or not necessarily hugely confident in front of the camera. I take them and I make them feel like a rock star. That's my job. And they don't need to see what goes on behind the scenes. They just expect it done. And that's how I'm able to charge a premium for it, because I do all that behind the scenes. They don't need to see it. They don't need to know about it. But the final image makes them go, well, damn, I do look good.
Yeah.
And, is that an ethical thing where I'm like, retouching people? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think it depends on how far you take it, just like anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other things that I use are, like that AI arty thing I thought was amazing. I've had a lot of fun with Mid-Journey. But even with Mid-Journey, like you were saying before about using it for mood boards and stuff, I find myself really unsatisfied with the results, which is perfect, because that means, oh, okay, what I want doesn't actually exist yet. I need to go out and make it. So how do I make it?
You have to do it, don't you?
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day that AI isn't replacing creativity. It's replacing mediocrity. That's how I see it. The mediocre stuff will be wiped out by AI. So all your entry-level rubbishy stuff, AI.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for you guys? It means that if you're serious about pursuing a creative career, you have to level up. This is going to be a sorting, like a sieve for the creative industry. Those who are reliant on, lowbrow, low effort, low creation, low ability, all that like general at the bottom of the tier stuff, you'll get wiped out. Of course you will.
Because AI can take care of that stuff.
Yeah.
Or if it doesn't right now, it's certainly on its way to doing so.
Yeah, so I don't see that being a problem. But what I do find really interesting though is like, people using AI on a general sense. So let's say your client's like, well, if I can do it in AI, what do I need you? How do you feel about that?
I'd say good luck.
I knew you were going to say that.
By all means, you can try. You're probably not going to get the result that you're after. It's not, especially when it comes to photos of food. Look, we've all seen those AI generated images of food. They're absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And you can pick them.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah. It's like the 7 fingers on a hand.
But it's everything's too smooth. Everything looks fake. There's no depth of field.
I was going to say AI doesn't understand depth of
There's
field.
no depth of field whatsoever. The colours are wrong. The shape of things are wrong. Like it's so wrong. It's so wrong. So and you know what? I've had these discussions with my clients. I had one a week ago when I was like in the middle of the shoot and we were just chatting about it. And he's like, "Oh, they're absolutely horrible. Like there's why would I choose to use AI to generate an image of a dish in my restaurant that looks like absolute crap? I'm going to market that?
Yeah.
No chance. Absolutely no chance. That's a reflection of my business. No.
You've just nailed it. Like you're going to start alienating potential client base because they're not able to have that like emotional connection, and food is very emotional. Like
it is.
You don't want to be salivating when you're looking at something like, yes, I want to eat that, I want to do that. And something like with the food industry, I mean, you'll speak to this better than I can, but on TikTok or Instagram, not that I'm on TikTok, but on Instagram, you see all these reels about people going to these new locations, and we're in Foodie Central, we're in Melbourne, Australia, and everything here is centres around our hospitality industry, even though it's struggling. But, you'll have someone pop up that does like somewhere that we have been dying to go, and we will go next week. And now that I'm saying it.
Where?
The cheesecake place in Collingwood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very Melbourne thing, like you open a shop for one specific thing.
Very niche.
Very niche. But, that cheesecake place, there's 1,000,000,001 ways to make a cheesecake. There's 1,000,000,001 places that will probably make cheesecake in their restaurant. What makes people want to come specifically and drive across the river? We have to cross the river. That's a very Melbourne thing to say, crossing the river.
That's the what is it, the Pride Let? We don't go
it's
there.
It's a dark, shadowy place. We don't go there, Simba. It really is. We sound like absolute twats, but it's so true. And the north side says it about us. They don't come to
exactly.
They don't go south, and they don't go visit Mexicans. They'll say, but So for example, this cheesecake place. The reason it becomes viral on social media and gets a cult following is because there's something about wanting to go there and experience it, and that's it. It's the experience. Now, I can't talk to their cheesecakes. I'll report back. But are they the best cheesecake in the world? They don't need to be. There's something about that physical experience and that memory that you get that makes it worth it.
Yep.
And I don't think AI will ever replicate that.
No, it can't. Can't possibly.
Do you remember The Matrix where I can't remember I think, is it Cyber, the bald guy, and he's sitting there and he wants to eat a steak?
Yes.
And he's like, I want to go back into the Matrix and eat the steak.
Yes.
And I think people see AI as replacing those core memories. Like, oh, you don't need to have the memory now because you can just get the photo. And that's like saying I've been to Disneyland and like photoshopping yourself in front of Disneyland. Do you know what I mean? Like you can fool other people, but you can't fool yourself.
No, that's very empty.
Yeah, there's a real sort of you'd be really, really bankrupt inside. You wouldn't have all these memories without that.
Well, no.
So, yeah, I'm not worried about AI. Not at, well, look, this is what I would say, and to summarize what we're talking about, the best will always rise to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you want to be seen as a top level photographer in the next decade, you will be using those AI proficiency tools.
You have to be. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind.
You'll be left behind. Yeah. And I think this is something else that I wanted to touch on just before we go, because we talked about this off camera. The agency model, the traditional agency model, I've worked in agencies. It was always, you had the head of the company, and then under that you had the studio, and then you had the ad team, or what do you call it? My mind's gone blank. What are they called?
I don't know.
The sales team, the account managers. That's what I was looking for, account managers. You'd have the account managers, and then you have the studio, and the account managers were the ones that were client-facing, and then they'd come back and relay that information to the studio people, and whether it's a graphic designer, the photographer, whatever, you'd have all these different people working on this one thing. And my very first couple of jobs in the industry were big Fortune 500 companies. So I worked for News, I worked for Fairfax, like big companies that had big budgets. And like on a photo shoot back then, like I worked for Vogue for a little while, Vogue Living, Donna Hay. Those productions were obscene. There'd be like 20, 30 people on set. And, you'd have a lighting tech, a digitech. You'd have all these different people. It was someone's job to do the coffee, usually me. And, the model, the hair and makeup artist, the second photographer, the photographer's assistant, whatever. And that's just not commercially viable these days.
No, it's not.
We
The
don't
money's
have that
not
much.
there. Yeah, the budgets just aren't there.
What I wanted to touch on for a lot of the young ones or the beginners, the reason those people had those budgets is because the industry was gate kept. It was not a monopoly, that's not the right word. It was a very select few who had budget because you controlled the eyeballs.
That's right.
So publishing and TV and radio, they were the big three. If you were a radio station, you controlled the ears. If you were a newspaper, you controlled the eyes. And if you were TV, you controlled both. And that's where all the advertisers would go because that's where all the attention was. So say, let's just pick a big brand, Nike.
Yep.
Right? Nike probably spend a couple $1 billion annually on advertising. They would direct that couple $1 billion directly to those big three.
Yep.
So they'd make a radio commercial, they'd make a TVC, and then they'd have some print, which meant that the one agency was getting a huge amount of money because they were responsible for all that, and then it would get rolled out that way. Whereas now it just doesn't work that with the globalized market, but you've also got all these different niches and all these different people and industries. So you want to try and get people in those niches. So now Nike might be using 30 different agencies, and like they've got one for their basketball team, one for their football team, one for their running team, yoga, whatever. And it's impossible for that one agency to do all those things. And so what you've got now is that money has been, those budgets are smaller because they're going out into more avenues. Right. And now with social media, you've got user-generated content, you've got influencers. So, we don't have the spend anymore. It's not because the money's gone. It's just been diversified.
The landscape's changed.
Yeah. And so my advice is you got to get what I call like your creative community. You got to have people in your little circle. And this can everyone always fears about the oversaturation. And I'm so against this because I say this all the time. The market will sort you out.
Of course it will.
If you get your little team together and in your team you've got, you could have a couple of photographers. Like Sally and I don't do the same work, so we work together. If Sally needs a second hand, she's got me. If I need a second hand, she's got vice versa, whatever I was saying. You can use some AI when you can't afford to add that extra person in, whether it's copywriting or something. You might have a graphic designer in there. You might have a videographer. You might have someone who's really savvy with sales or lead gen. And then you're basically becoming an agency, but there's no overheads.
Yeah.
You don't need to pay for your big swishy office. You don't have all these account managers that rely on commission to earn their income. You've got 4 or 5 people that can sort of do all those topics, and you only need to service a couple of good clients, and that's a good living. You don't need to be getting all that massive ad revenue.
No.
And I remember an agency I worked at just before COVID. And it was really interesting because this obviously all happened at the start of the pandemic. And I was there as a subcontractor, as a photographer. And in the agency, I think there was 12 of us. So again, account management team and sales team, and then the creatives. And then you obviously had the chain of command up the top. And one of our biggest clients was on a retainer of, I think, I want to say like 50, 60K per month. And that 50, 60K paid everyone's wages.
Yeah.
So if we lost that client, the agency was done. And that's a very dangerous way to build your business because guess what? That happened.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the saving grace for that agency was everyone became remote. So there was no longer the overheads of office. And then, you know, a lot of people lost jobs. But that agency had to think really quickly to save themselves. And what it meant is that you tightened up a lot of loopholes. You stopped going from having 3 full-time staff to using people on Upwork or Freelancer or getting subbies in when you need them. And that's where the industry is at now. It's been a huge change, but the work's still there.
Oh, it will always be there. There's always going to be work there. But as you said, like the industry itself will sort you out.
Yeah.
I don't think I hate it, same as you, when I hear people saying that, oversaturation. Oh, not really. Not really.
Everyone's got a voice.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different way of doing things. And, I mean, food photography, this is not a new concept.
No.
You broke into the market. You were able to do it. And that's because you've got a unique perspective in the market. You know, like this is the key thing. You come into the industry, you learn off your predecessors, you learn off what's out there, and you take a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B, and like I said, you just create your own special sauce.
Yeah, it takes a while, but like you get there eventually. And I've been led and taught and mentored by people who have instilled in me the value of collaboration over competition. So I am very much someone who talks to my peers in the same industry.
Yeah.
I talk to other food photographers. I learn off other food photographers. We bounce ideas back and forth. Most of them tend to be American because I find that Americans are a lot more open to doing that.
Let's talk about that. Let's end on that.
Do you really want to?
Yeah, and I think this is a big one because I have found Australian photographers, not all, this is a generalization, but it is not uncommon for me to feel like they're slamming doors in my faces
100%.
and they are hostile. I'll give you an example. I need a mentor for my masters, and I need a mentor who's quite successful in the fashion or beauty industry. So someone who's probably working with top tier brands. And I'm successful in my own right, but I'm still early days in my career. Man, I got 20, 30 years to go, hopefully. I need someone who's like a veteran. And I sent out 15 emails last week to 15 different photographers. How many responses back do you reckon I got?
None.
I got 1.
Wow.
1. And it was a guy. And it was a really well-known male photographer. And he was the only one that wrote back. And my email was, you know, they're going to get paid by my university. They're like, I wasn't asking for anything. It was just literally like no, you're blocked. I have followed photographers on Instagram that are Melbourne-based and they block me. I'm like, ooh, Jesus, okay, sorry. Like, I'm not stealing your ideas, man.
But that's like, it's that scarcity mindset that people think that you're going to come in and steal their clients and steal their work. No, there's enough pieces of the pie for everybody. And if you are that concerned and that insecure, because that's, I believe, what it boils down to, well, it sounds like a you problem.
Yeah.
Like, the value that you get from working with your peers, from helping those beneath you come up to your level so that you can also keep like, it makes me really mad.
I think if you're servicing your client and they're happy, they're not going to leave you because it takes a long time to brief someone again and to bring them up to speed and to onboard and all that sort of stuff. Like, if you're servicing your client to a point where they're like, yeah, she's great, like, we'll just keep using Carly because it's just, she's great. But if you're crap, whether it's your work, your communication, your turnaround, your attitude, you know, all those different things, and your client's like, oh my God, like, no.
No.
Yeah, they will go somewhere else.
trying to, and you know this because I've been trying to do it for quite a while, is to break into that editorial part of the industry here. And I had someone say to me, oh, you know, such and such as, you know, these two photographers have got Melbourne cornered. I'm like, fuck that.
That is nonsense.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
No, like I don't care if they've got it cornered. Maybe they do now.
They did. I see that as like the ultimate like challenge. That makes me excited.
Yeah.
I hear that and I'm like, oh.
But that just, it's that attitude, and it's a very Australian thing, and we could talk about this for hours. It's a very Australian thing, whereas I am so much more comfortable going to my American peers and having a chat when I need help.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Everyone gives their ideas freely, happily.
We love Americans.
Americans
are awesome.
Like just it's the atmosphere and the support that you get. Everyone wants to see you do well.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to see you crush your goals.
Yeah.
Here, nah.
Yeah. I've seen this a lot. I've mentored a lot of students. I've probably had 50 students under my mentorship or coaching, and they all say the same thing. Like, no one wants to talk to me. No one will tell me anything. Like, I asked this photographer how they did that and they like got mad at me. I'm like, yeah, it's a scarcity thing. And I don't know if it's like this in other countries, but in Australia it's prolific.
It is prolific. Like so much so I get comments from people in my DM saying, oh my God, thank you, Sally, for, you know, answering my questions and just being so free with the information and advice that you give. And I'm like, well, yeah, man, because ultimately it helps the entire industry.
Yeah.
If you're bringing people up to charge what they're worth, to, you know, like all those things, it helps you as a photographer as well.
Yeah.
Like you want the industry to do well, because if the industry's not doing well, guess what? You're not doing well either.
And just on that, that's such a good point too. With the young ones coming up under you, they're not taking your job. They're at different stages, and you got to remember how long it's taken you to get to where you got to. Like, I've been in this industry 20 years, but I started as a graphic designer, then did fashion, now I'm doing photography. I've been doing paid photography work since 2018. So what's that make me? Like, that's not a huge career. There's photographers who've done 20, 30 years, and then there's people coming up under me who are doing it for a year. Everyone's at different levels, and every client has different budgets and different tastes. And my frustration around, we're speaking specifically to Aussies because that's where we live, but Aussies see it, like you said, a real scarcity thing, and I see that as insecurity, because if you're good and your client's happy, they're not going to leave you. No. But sharing that information and, like, for example, licensing is something that we don't do a lot of in Australia, and I think it's because the market share is just not there. But in America, like, you know, Sam, she'll charge amazing licensing fees, and you and I are just like, oh.
It's just not really done here because it's not, I don't believe that it's spoken about, and I also believe that a lot of photographers are too scared to charge licensing because they think that they're not going to get the job, which once again, you're undercutting yourself.
Yes.
You are doing that to your own detriment because it's to the detriment of the industry.
Yeah, I agree. And this is the only thing I will say that's a bit sloppy since we've gone from that traditional agency model where you had people advocating for you because they obviously wanted their slice of the pie. But now you've got the wild, wild west where there's a lot of new people who maybe don't know how it was done.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that those things can't change, but for example, you know, if you've got a client who's like a national client or a global client and they have the budget and they're using your photography not just for web and social, but out of home, TVC, publishing, you need to be paid licensing.
That is licensing, Matt. Like 100. Like there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No, you charge licensing.
The reason being, okay, so you've come up with the idea, you came up with the creative, it's your IP, you own that IP, you never sign that over, and you know you get paid, let's say $2,000-$3,000 for the day, but then the client uses that same IP to then generate millions in revenue. Well, yeah, man, you need your cut of that. That's how you survive.
Well, they are making money off your IP.
Correct.
Therefore, you are to be paid for that. It's a transaction.
And that's why it really frustrates me when creatives are devalued, because it's literally us that gets you the sales, man. That's how it works.
Oh, you know? And the whole, it's just for social media.
No, it's not. It's to make money.
Social media is your largest marketing platform available to you at this point in time. It is making you money. It is getting you customers. It is getting you clients. There is nothing just about it. Yeah. It is your biggest marketing platform. So saying it's just for socials, you're not going to get a cheaper price because of that. And if that's what you're after, like, you're not my person.
I feel like we could talk about this for hours.
Yes.
Maybe we should. In the comments below, let us know, because Sally and I talk about this stuff all day, every day. And we are building a little something behind the scenes that we'll share in due time. But this is something that I feel like we just need to have these conversations with our peers.
Yeah.
That's all it is, just having conversations. You know, share your stories of woe, of terrible experiences that you've had. But knowledge is power, and we can all elevate each other and make our lives better. And, you know, I'll give you a really good example. I sold my photography studio to another photographer last year. My business partner and I decided to sell it just because neither of us was interested in running a studio. We just needed a studio, pardon me, to work at. And the guy who bought it, Brendan, he's a legend. He's a wedding photographer. And he bought it because he wants to step away from weddings because he's got young kids who are about to go to school. And obviously as a wedding photographer, you're shooting Saturday, Sundays, and that's the only days he'll get to see his kids. So he's thinking ahead and going, okay, as his kids start to transition into primary school, he wants to sort of be able to put his time into something else so that, you know, he gets to spend time with his kids. He's like, a studio. And, you know, it could have just been like, hey, good luck, see you later, take my money and run. But, you know, Brendan and I had a chat. We were handing over and got along really well, and then just had a lot in common, and we're like, hey, actually, like, can we work together? Because I still need a studio. So I hire the studio, and, you know, Brendan needed a second for a wedding. I've worked with Brendan shooting his wedding. That only happened because we had a conversation. You know, it could have been transactional, like, see you later, bye. But now it's like, you know, we've worked together a lot. And what Brendan wants to do with the studio is create like a hub for creatives and then outsource, like manage all the client and then outsource the work to the subbies. That's the new model of an agency.
Yeah,
That's what we just talked about. And so already working with Brendan, like we've worked together on quite a few projects, which is amazing.
But this is the thing, by collaborating, like collaboration over competition.
Correct.
Again, I will say that until like my dying day. I will die on that hill. At the top, people are collaborating. At the bottom, people are competing.
Correct.
It's a mindset shift, and it has like that's
Write
essentially
that
what
down.
it is.
At the bottom, people are competing. At the top, they're
Yes,
collaborating.
like, that's not I don't take credit for that quote. I read it somewhere.
Take it. It's yours.
But like, are there a handful of Australian photographers and stuff that I will chat to? Yes, of course there are. But they're very few.
Yeah.
Because so many are just not willing to have those conversations, or they will have conversations up to a point, but they won't really want to go in depth about anything.
I've
Whereas,
definitely seen that.
you know, again, I don't have that problem with my American peers.
Yeah.
Or my UK peers, to be fair, actually, my European ones.
I agree, actually. Like the way I've gotten some of my jobs, my bigger jobs, has been through Americans. Yeah. So
But this is the benefit that people don't realize. If you're collaborating, then if you're not available to do a job,
or
guess
people
what?
don't know you.
People don't know you.
Yeah.
If I come across a client that says, hey, I need this done, look, I'm really sorry, I'm booked out, but I can refer you to this photographer.
Who's great. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that I think people underestimate. But all right, I reckon we should wrap up, but summarize what your premonition is for 2025. Where are we going to see things at the end of this year?
I don't know. that feels like a very loaded question. In terms of what, AI or
just the market? I think you are going to see a lot of young, not young, I shouldn't say young. I think you're going to see a lot of the entry-level photographers being wiped out because they realize it's too hard, which is a great thing because, as I said, the market sorts you out. And I think you'll see what AI is doing is literally sifting out the people who just can't do it long-term. Like, that's it, you know? That's what I think you'll see. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because I think people underestimate how difficult it is to carve out a career in creativity, and the barrier to entry has never been lower. So, you know, you can go buy a camera, you can watch a couple of tutorials and then do some okay stuff. But then when it comes to storyboarding and creating creative and servicing clients, if you don't have all that, you know, it becomes very hard very quick. But guys, if you've enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments. Sally and I talk about stuff all day, every day. We're happy to do another one, and maybe we can do this more often. And drop your questions below. But if you haven't yet, make sure you go and follow Sally on Instagram at Sally Hulse Photography. The link will be in the description box below. Follow me, and we shall see you in another episode soon. So thanks, guys, and subscribe. Don't you go away. Subscribe, and you'll You'll see more of us.